Hello, and welcome to Module 9, Family Rights Under the Law. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the family rights under the law from the New York City Department of Education. So the first thing that we're trying to do is we want to have the least restrictive environment for the students in your classroom and in the school. And what that means is we really want them to be part of the general makeup of the classroom, if possible. Now, not all children, that's not possible with all children. Some children need one-on-ones, some need paras, some need occupational therapy, some need SEATs. There's lots of things that children need, but we want to do it in a way that really gives them the most access to education. But the Individualized Education Program, which is an IEP, drives instruction for every child who receives special education services. So let's take a look at what an IEP is. Well, it's a legal document. Under IDEA, which it is it's going to give us the right, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We want to have an IEP. An IEP is going to set out goals for each child based on their needs. And this is a living document. This document is something that you will have meetings about, that you will talk to families about, that you'll be talking to administrators about. And teachers play a really interesting role when we start to talk about IEPs. And especially when we're trying to build that bridge between families. So your role as an educator is not just to maintain this document. So in this document, you're going to be listing goals that the child has. You're going to try to make sure that those goals actually include the family. So you're going to be meeting during your IEP meetings, and hopefully you'll be meeting with these families more than just an IEP meeting. And you'll be meeting with them to try to figure out what we can do to help this child achieve everything that they could possibly achieve. So you're not only going to have to be thinking about education for this child, but you're really going to need to be an advocate. So what does that mean? That means that you need to be up to date on what is required in terms of an IEP. That means that you're going to have to really help the family determine what's in the best interest of the child. And that's really what this is all about. What's in the best interest of the child, and how can we help that child succeed in life? Now, you're getting them at a very young age. When we're talking about this, we're talking about working with families, birth through second grade. And especially in those early years, the first thing that we do is we don't start with an IEP. We start with an IFSP. That's an Individualized Family Service Plan. That plan is really looking directly at the child and saying, what does this child need? And what does this family need to help support this child? And everything that we do is really about what can be done at home. What can the parents do? What can the providers who come in do? Now, after that, we start to move to an IEP. The IEP in the early years also centers on what does that child need. So we're looking at these specific goals that we have for the child that in a lot of ways is separate from the goals of the classroom. So the goal might be takes turns, waits to take their turn when playing a game with another child. It may be learns to raise their hand when asking a question. Now, after our Turning 5 meeting, we start to move into a different way of looking at IEPs. And the IEPs are more about how can we support this child as a learner in a classroom. So it might talk about needing extra time in tests. We might talk about needing someone to read questions to a child. So we start to form that IEP more around how can we support that child as a classroom learner. So we move from that Individualized Family Service Plan, which is how can we support the family and the child, to the next plan, which is how can we support the child, to the final plan, which is how can we support the child as a learner in the classroom. And then we get to the final one, which is how can we transition them from IEP into being an effective adult. But we're not looking at that so much in this class. What we're really looking at is those early years. So as we start to move on in this section, we really want to start to think about how can we advocate for the children in our schools and how can we advocate for the families. Now, what we see happen a lot of the time is that families who are well educated, who have means, do very well in getting what the services that they need for their child. But families who are young parents, who are single parent families, parents who are working 2 jobs, parents with unemployed families, don't have the same access to information in terms of assisting the child and even knowing what to ask for. We have something called a parent advocate that comes to a lot of these meetings, and they should be present. And these are people who have gone through the process and can really help guide that family. But besides them, you need to be a part of it. So your moral obligation in this, and actually your professional obligation in this, is to be as informed as you can, to give the parents the resources that they need, to give them the support that they need. So when they hit these meetings, they come in hitting the ground running. They know what to ask for, and they know how to ask for what they need. Now, you're going to be balancing sort of a funny line here too, which is, your school might not want to have to pay for all of this. And so you don't want to put your job on the line. But at the same time, you have to think, what is in the best interest of the student? So it is an interesting balancing act that you're going to have to go through. So what I'm suggesting is that you read the information present in this module and you start to think, not only as an educator, but put yourself in the position of the family members. How would it feel if my child needed these services? What would I need from a teacher in this situation? And that might be a translator, that might be having documents translated, that might be documents read, that might just be having an ear to be an empathetic listener. You're going to have to judge what they need. But this is something that you need to think about in terms of your practice, because it's one of the most important things that we do, is supporting the family and supporting the child. Thank you.